Whitehall Mystery. This is a game of hidden movement inspired by Scotland Yard, and also it is, as far as I can tell, the smaller, faster, shorter brother of Letters from Whitechapel. However, I've not played Letters from Whitechapel, so I won't be able to compare the two games directly or more in detail than I just did. But hey, you watch my videos, that means you're pretty smart people. I'm sure you can figure that out. Whitehall Mystery, a game of hidden movement. One player will control a murderer called Jack, and Jack doesn't really appear on the board. The position of Jack is recorded on a log secretly, and then we have three detectives that can be controlled by a number of players. You don't have to necessarily have three players, you will have three detectives, so all players but Jack control those three detectives that you see here, and their job is to capture Jack before Jack commits three murders, or at least to delay Jack enough. So the game takes place on this board here, and I'm gonna let you have a general look at the board in its entirety. It's a mounted board, of course, looks really nice, a little bit cluttered and busy at first sight, but after you become familiar with it, and you will become very familiar when you play the game, you stare at it quite a bit, then it turns out to be absolutely functional. So you have, as you can see, four quadrant. This is important. Before the game begins, the player controlling Jack takes one of these sheets of paper, and here in these four bubbles writes down four numbers, one from each quadrant, and they have to be numbers in a white circle. So for example, Jack's write down 117, 142, 46, and 32. And that's how pretty much Jack sets up the game. Then the players or player controlling the detectives will place the detectives on these dots with a yellow edge. All that the yellow edge does is to indicate those are starting places for the detectives. At that point, Jack looks back at their log and chooses one of these locations as their starting location and places a red disc in that location. Suppose just like that, to indicate that that is where Jack is right now, the beginning of the game. The other three numbers that were written here are the locations of the three murders that Jack is going to commit. If Jack is able to pretty much go to those three locations in any order before being caught, Jack wins the game. Every time that Jack moves to a new location, the movement is kept track of on this track here. If Jack moves to 15 spaces without reaching the next location where to commit a murder, then also Jack loses the game. So that's again how the players win. Capture Jack or delaying long enough, commit the three murders without taking too long, and that's how you win or lose the game. So the player's pieces will move on the board. The detectives will actually move physically. Jack will move notionally, so to speak, simply by recording locations on this log here. What is interesting is that Jack moves from numbered location to numbered location. So for example, from 117, Jack can move to 134 or 118 or 19 or even 81. You can go as far as you want, as long as you stop at the next number. The detectives move from dot to dot. So for this detective, for example, this would be a move, and this would be another move, or here, or here, or here. So interesting that they move on the same grid, but they have different stops. They can never be exactly in the same location. So that's fun. That's a variant, for example, from the game Scotland Yard, in which the detectives need to actually sit on top of the place where the criminal is. So the way it works, at the beginning of each turn, Jack moves, recording their new location here. Usually Jack will simply move from a number to the next number following one of these dotted lines, say from 134 to 121 or 119, etc., etc., etc. And after that, Jack announces that they moved by moving the jack marker here. Jack moved by one location, and then we move the marker by one location. Easy peasy. However, jack has 6 tiles indicating special movement. It's 3 types. Each type has 2 tiles, and so these kinds of special movement can be used twice per game only. Once jack uses a special movement tile, it is discarded. When they're gone, they're gone. By using a boat, jack can move from any blue location to another blue location within the same body of water. A body of water is an area, a water area, surrounded by black dotted lines or by blue dotted lines. For example, by playing one of those boat tiles, jack could move from any location in this body of water to any location within this body of water. Movement by alley, similar. Jack moves through alleys that are too small to be marked on the board, and so jack moves from a location to another location within the same body of buildings. So this time we're looking at a brown area entirely surrounded by a dotted line. So with the alley movement, jack will go from here to here, from here to here, or if looking at this other body of buildings, from here to here, although that wouldn't do anything because he could just move that way. And some of these bodies of buildings have quite unusual shapes, so you need to become familiar with them, and you will be. So jack could jump from 134 to 122 using alley movement. This will be another body of buildings, and so on and so forth. The coach is the easiest of these special movements because jack moves by 2 locations, again marking that fact here, and can move through detectives. Jack usually cannot move through detectives, but can by using a coach. So much for jack's movement. And then after jack moves and announces to the detectives that they did so, the detectives activate. Each detective can move by 0, 1, or 2 spaces. Jack cannot move by 0, must always move. So a detective can stay in the same space or move by 1 dot or by 2 dots. After the detectives have moved, each detective can perform one of two actions. A detective can look, easy one, can perform an arrest. They say, I'm going to perform an arrest in, and they name a number which is adjacent to that location. So blue detective right now could perform an arrest in 121, 104, or 122. You say, okay, my detective performed an arrest in 121. If jack is there, jack says, yes, jack is there. Jack is captured, jack loses the game, the detective player or players win the game. Otherwise, jack simply says, no, not there, and doesn't say anything else. This is important. Another action that the detective can perform after moving instead of performing an arrest is to look for clues, in which case they announce, okay, my detective is looking for clues in, and the detective says the name of an adjacent location, say 121. If that is not correct, that is, that number is not on jack's log for the current section of the game, there are 3 rounds in the game. If that location is not on jack's log, then jack says, no, not on my log, no clues there. In which case, the detective can try again. Okay, I'm looking for clues in 122. No, not on the log. Okay, I'm looking for 104. And jack maybe this time says, yes, there's a clue there. In which case, jack places a yellow disc there to indicate that the number is in the log for the current round. That means that jack has been there. But when? It may even be that jack is there. Actually, there may be cases when the detectives have really good sense, and in fact they're working together, and one of them is looking for clues, and once they find a clue there and they think that actually there's not just jack was there but is there, then another one says, okay, I'm performing an arrest in 104, and maybe jack is really there. But again, that's an interesting thing, because as the game progresses, you may really be able to put together a trail of crumbs or body parts or blood stains that will lead you, that will show you jack was here, and will show you where jack was, and then maybe finally, booyah, where jack is. So this is the general idea. Jack moves, then the detectives move and look for clues and or try to perform arrests. Continue like this for up to 3 rounds in case Jack does perform his 3 murders, or 3 rounds still in case he performs 2 and then he gets caught here. But you continue until either Jack performs his 3 murders, in which case he wins the game, or the detectives capture him or delay him long enough, in which case they win the game. These days of quarantine, my players of choice and of necessity are my daughters, myself. I play a lot of games, solitaire, and when we can convince her, also my wife. She's a light gamer, very occasional gamer, and in these difficult times of quarantine she plays even less. Convincing the wife slash mom to play with us is a rare treat. And we were able, maybe it's the mystery theme, she likes mysteries, or she saw us enjoy it so much. So I originally played the game with my daughters, both of them. They are now 8 and 10. That tells you this is a game that you can play with young gamers. If the murder theme makes you feel uncomfortable, tell them that Jack is stealing stuff and you need to prevent 3 robberies or something. So it's not, there isn't any gory element in there. So from the point of view of complexity, you can play with young gamers and you can play with casual gamers. So I played with my 2 daughters, so it was 3 of us, with 1 of them alone, with also my wife. So we played it with 2, 3, or 4 players, which is the range of players recommended on the box. I guess you could play with more players as long as everybody's agreeing to control the 3 detectives. But I can tell you, regardless of numbers of player, gameplay doesn't change substantially and remains nice and sweet. Hidden movement is a fun mechanic. It can overstay its welcome. Here the game is nice and tight and it has a really nice pace because it's basically 3 mini games. And yet it doesn't feel like rinse and repeat. Something that is annoying sometimes is when a game has several rounds that have no connection with one another. Here there is a connection, there is organic feel, there is an architecture, there is a flow. So it feels very tight, like a pretty unique story, but it's punctuated by these showstoppers when Jack reveals, haha, there was a murder that was committed here. But again, there is flow, because for example, if you see that Jack tends to choose locations that are towards the center of the board, so the corners of the quadrants closer to the center, of course there's an advantage there because those are the shortest paths. But then Jack becomes predictable, so if you see that 2 of those locations are there, maybe the 3rd location, the last location, is going to be also close towards the center of the missing quadrant. Or is it that completely eccentric? So there is an element there. It's not exactly a meta game, but you can try to get a sense of Jack's style, of Jack's possible next moves. So I like that it does feel like a really thrilling manhunt that has a single narrative, but yet at the same time is punctuated by these exciting moments as you feel, Jack only has 2 moves left and we can win if we stop that, but then Jack commits a murder and then another round starts. Very nice pace and flow there. I just like, I guess, pretty much anything and everything. If you watch my video review for Scotland Yard, you know that to me is a revered classic, and I will never disrespect that. However, sometimes classics become the foundation for something even better, and I think Whitehall Mystery is even better. Again, I cannot compare with Whitechapel, I'll let you do that, but I can compare with Scotland Yard, and to me Scotland Yard was really awesome, as Scotland Yard was about catching a criminal that was running away, but it wasn't really anything that Mr. X was doing in that game. I find it's a lot more fun to try to figure out where Jack is going next when Jack is committed to certain objectives. Yet at the same time, there is flexibility there because Jack can do them in different orders. it just feels more significant as you're trying to not just catch a criminal, but also prevent those crimes, as opposed to just catch a criminal that we don't know exactly what he did in the original game. It feels more thematic. It feels a lot more like a thriller as opposed to just a puzzle. There definitely are really cinematic moments as the detectives find a clues in a location and they feel that Jack was just there. There may be a case where they find a location, clues in a location, and they know Jack is there, but there's no one there able to catch him. You get this cinematic moment in which the detective is there looking at the clues and stands up thinking about, oh my gosh, he's here, looking around, and Jack just left a fraction of a second. There are some really intense fun cinematic moments like that, which is remarkable for a game that its core is a puzzle. You can just try to deduce and bluff, and you can do it as a mathematical exercise, but there's just so much theme that I was really, really pleasantly surprised. So what you have here is a game that does feel like a thriller story in playable format, not just a hidden movement puzzle exercise with a pasted on theme. It is a really thrilling game that feels like a thriller story that has really tight gameplay. Jack is never too far, and yet Jack also has chances of making it. So you really have a sense of tension, which is pretty much constant. I would say the intellectual elements, the puzzle element, and the emotional element, we're going to capture this criminal, really come together very well. Again, you put that together with the tight, nice pace and with a game that does not overstay its welcome, and you have a game that is simply addictive, that you play over and over again. We spent an afternoon playing it one game after the other because everybody, I'm going to be Jack next time, and everybody was Jack once, and we wanted to play again. Then we played the following day. So basically, we've been playing a lot in this Christmas break here. And I think this is gonna be in the constant rotation when the quarantine is over and I start having game night with adult friends again, with hardcore gamers. Definitely, this is a game that I look forward to playing with them. It's a game that is so simple, but it can have so much depth, and most importantly, it is just so much fun. Whitehall Mystery. I'm really enthusiastic about this game. Truly, I find it to be a great game, and my family, all of it, agrees with me.